Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Goffstown Planning Board. This is our regularly scheduled meeting for tonight, August 10th, 2023. We normally begin with introductions, and we'll start with Joanne.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Mr. Chair, I thought we were starting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
We haven't adopted it yet in our...
Oh, we haven't?
It's not on the agenda.
I thought we took a
We
consent.
had a consensus, but it has to be in our rules of
Okay.
procedure, and we have to vote on it.
Okey dokey, don't want to miss it, that's all.
So, since you're up next.
Collis Adams, Select Board Representative.
Thank you, Collins.
Philip Devanza.
Gayla Brooke, alternate and recording secretary.
Tim Redmond.
Scott Ozana, Town Engineer.
Brian Mazer.
Barbara Griffin?
Colleen Mayu.
David Pierce, I'm an alternate.
Thank you, everyone. Kimberly will not be here tonight, so David, you're voting on all matters. All right, Joanne, we have correspondence and action items. We have minutes from July 27th, 2023. Does anyone have corrections?
Motion to approve.
I thought it was-
I'll second it. If there's no amendments.
Okay. There's been motions been made to approve them as presented. And there's no other discussion on the matter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. I'm going to put a second correspondent action item, the letter that's on our desk here from Northern New Hampshire Planning. Joanne?
Yes, this is a letter that we receive every year, and it explains that the dues for the upcoming year, what the cost will be, as well as what they've done for us this past year. So I did transfer this email to Danielle, the finance director, so she's going to hold on to it until it's ready to be paid, so it gets paid out of the 2024 budget. They must be on a fiscal year, Southern New Hampshire. If they're sending
It says
this
right
to
on that
us.
fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what
Can I
this
ask a
is.
question?
Please.
I was a little surprised at the number, to be honest with you. How does that compare historically to what we've been paying? Do you know what I mean? Is this a big increase, or?
No, they've actually kept the rate the same for several years now. I don't know how they're doing it, to be,
All right.
I think there was a
Perfectly
small
honest.
increase last year.
but very minor.
It was a minor increase, and I'm not recalling
You would
this
know, you were
year.
the treasurer.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was the treasurer for this organization. The rate addressed here is the same rate for the previous year.
Okay.
Yes.
67 cents per person in town.
And when it went up a small amount.
And it
the
went up
previous-
very slight amount the previous year, but this bill is the same rate. And then it's multiplied by the population of the town that's taken from state records.
Thank you.
So if you look at all the bullet items on their list of the projects they did, I'd be curious to know how many of them have actual possibility of being utilized. So whoever's asking for these types of projects to be looked at and billed for, that is someplace that maybe our bill could be reduced.
The bill is not based on what they do for us. The bill is just an overall, based on the overal population of the town.
So it's a flat rate
It's
for
a
the
flat rate,
population, no
yes.
matter how many projects they
A
do.
Correct.
fixed calculation.
Thank you.
Okay.
Didn't know that. I thought work was charged as
Time
requested.
materials.
Okay.
There are, if I might just elaborate for 1 second, the Planning Commission has a number of functions, which is their primary and most important is essentially a pass-through organization for a lot of federal funding that supports highway projects. But in conjunction with that, they also have access to a number of other funds that provide money to do various studies and work, which then they do for communities. Throughout the year, community planners will get emails saying, we have the opportunity to do A, B, and C. If you think this would be helpful to you, let us know, and we'll include your community in the work. And so when they do the budget, what they do, they have the grant money that comes in that they use as an offset to expenses, and the net amount gets determined between the communities. The budget will also include in it contracted work, which is what I think you're thinking of, like when we had them do the update to the master plan. And last week, we discussed some work that we decided to go with another vendor. So part of their budget every year will have contracted services where they specifically allocate time for one of their employees or a subcontractor to them to do the work. So that's how it comes, because you'll see a lot of the things on this list are done with federal money, whether you're for or against the federal funding, it comes into the area regardless. So that's sort of how it works. Thank you.
Thanks for that, yeah, excellent. So Joanne, what do we need to do with this evening as a board?
It's just for your information.
Okay.
Okay, so everyone knows what it is and what it's all about. Very good. Anything else under correspondent action items, Joanne? I don't see anything on my list. Do you
No,
have
it's
anything
a
to
light,
add?
it's a light one tonight.
Okay, so we have old business only to start with. One application, old business, map 3, lot 41, Joanne?
Yes, so the first application is St. Anselm College, and they are back, they were with us a few weeks ago, and they have come back with amended plans. Let them get settled. There were several items that mainly had to do with drainage that Scott and Nick Golan from TF Moran were working on. They have since resolved that this afternoon, and Scott can talk about that further when he gives his report, but this does help this plan move further ahead from where we're at right now. When you had looked at this the last time, you found it complete. I'm sorry, you waived the waivers for completeness only, so you need to go back and do the waivers. There's actually 4 waivers that they're requesting, and that can be found on page 4. DPW has also included their comments on those waivers.
I've since changed one of
Okay.
my comments on this.
Because you were okay with 3 but not 4,
Yes,
so.
I'm okay with all 4 now.
All right.
Oh, good, okay. And the other departments commented, assessing had no comments, fire had no further comments, police didn't receive any comments. And then there's Scott's comments, which he could cover himself. So based on the changes that have happened this afternoon, staff is recommending that the board approve this plan with conditions which are laid out, plus the condition that Scott will present. And I also have 2 other conditions that I'd like to add on when we get to that point.
So now let's go right to the question, Joanne. There's 16 conditions at least on page 6 and 7. Are any of them, in your opinion, non-administrative that needs to be handled by the board, or are you recommending they be handled administratively?
I'm recommending they be handled administratively. Do you want me to?
No, not right now. I just
don't
see
even know what I was
lots of
gonna say.
conditions and you're recommending approval. You're recommending an approval when we have 16 conditions. I like the
Right, and these are
staff opinion.
these are basically the regular template type
That's fine.
conditions that are listed here.
Asked and answered.
Okay.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions for staff before I ask Scott a question? Scott, would you like to comment prior to the presentation, or would you like to comment from your standpoint after they make their presentation?
I don't mind updating you all a little of what has progressed since our last meeting. So TF Moran had I had actually met with TF Moran and members of St. Anselm staff on campus. We had a discussion. We talked about the overtopping. I think I was a little, I misunderstood it a little, and we agreed on something that I guess I didn't fully understand. And then when I got the new submission that you see before you, I saw some things I didn't like. There was a lot of overtopping of catch basins. One in particular, that's the closest one to St. Anselm's Drive. I was worried it was going to send more surface water to the road itself. So Nick and his staff actually worked over last weekend to address my concerns and pretty much alleviated all of my concerns. There's still a tiny bit of overtopping, but how we've come to mitigate that is St. Anselm's is offering a $10,000 in off-site improvements. So one of the main problems with the system is the main trunk line of the drain comes down. It's a 10-inch plastic pipe, and then it goes into a 10-inch corrugated metal pipe, and it just necks the whole system down. And they're getting some tailwater up the pipe, and so it causes the catch basin to overtop. And currently, there's actually no catch basins on College Road down to St. Anselm's Drive. There's catch basins are off in the grass, and College Road is curbed, so any rain or snow melt on College Road actually ends up on St. Anselm's Drive. So we're going to use that $10,000 to put in 2 catch basins when we redo the road in 2025. It's on our road plan. It's between election cycles, so we don't want to get in everyone's way there. So we're going to redo the drainage, and once our trunk line is upsized and able to accept more water, it'll alleviate the problem on their site. So that's how we've worked it out. Adam Jacobs has been involved in this conversation. He's on board, and it's how we'd like to move forward with it. And all my other comments are, well, the number 3 of my comments was a mistake on my part. That's not not an 8-inch pipe. It's a 10-inch pipe. I went out and remeasured after. It's number 3.
What page are you on? Because my engineering plan comments start with 5 in my page, page 5.
Yeah, it's because, so comment number 7 on page 6, that was a mistake on my part. I've since remeasured the pipe and found it to be 10-inch, not 8-inch. And then number 2 is being mitigated by the offsite improvements.
Where's number 2?
I'm sorry, number 6. I gotta put away my original one.
Number 6?
Yeah,
Page
Offsiting?
5.
Starts on
Yeah.
5 and ends on 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Now, is DPW making a formal recommendation to the board for, because we're the ones that set the off-site improvement
Yes,
number.
so
We're gonna need something formal from DPW.
we
eventually.
could formally request it if
I
that's
just
what
can't
you'd
do it
like.
verbally, that's all.
Okay.
I think we need to have, because they have to do an estimate.
We did an estimate. I did one, Nick did one, we compared them. We're very close.
Well, it seems to me in the past, we've had documentation from DPW that they did an estimate and they gave it to us in writing in which we voted on it. That's my knowledge of prior incidents. You feel
I
good?
have the estimate here, if you
That's
want me to
fine.
print it.
No. Phil, do you concur with that, or have we done them verbally in the back?
Well, my recollection is usually in the packet we'll have a memo from Public
Yes,
Works.
my recollection.
So this all happened pretty fast this afternoon?
This happened after
Understood.
4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, everything will be
So-
subject to that.
Yeah, okay.
Barbara, you have a different?
Yeah, I just want to point out to the board that we don't have a meeting in 2 weeks. We don't meet again for another month. And I agree that this is normally in the packet, but this is so unusual, I can't remember the last time we did one.
I think it was in 2000 and...
There's the man with the notepad.
We did
No,
offsite.
back when we approved the Bog Road project, we approved off-site money for that project.
I know, but when was that?
We haven't
I can't-
done one of them since.
I know,
We
it's
just
been
did.
Well,
ages.
4 years ago, they had their
Starbucks.
11th anniversary, so it's 15 years ago, probably.
Wow. We did for Starbucks,
Okay.
and theirs was more, we
That was
We-
traffic related.
it was traffic related.
Yeah, that was traffic
It was to,
But we didn't have did we have a formal calculation
we
on
did
that?
not,
Yeah, we
because
did
it was
not.
kind of,
Stabilization.
Yeah, and I
like,
think it was $3,500, and I thought you put it into some report that you gave us, 'cause we
Yeah,
didn't.
but we
I
didn't have
probably
a,
did have
yeah.
a
So let's
request.
go-
All right, but I have a follow-up. So,
Okay.
so Scott, so I sort of like, I see this paperwork, but I was sort of focused when I reviewed my packet on the July 28th memo from TF Moran addressing your previous points. And do you hear?
I think I have it.
You
This
have that one? Okay. So when you talk about it really is a 10-inch pipe and I went out and we sort of have reached an agreement, is that dealing with 15, comment 15?
General comments on page 6, Barbara?
No, I'm looking,
Number 15, 3 of 5.
I'm
Oh,
looking
I
at,
don't know where that is, I have to find that.
Yeah.
So catch
Yeah,
basin
It
43.
is, but they have
I'll see if I
since,
can find
It's
mine.
that-
they have
Tim.
since addressed this, and I could go into detail about
no,
how
I
they changed
don't,
their modeling
but I
for
remember,
us.
you agreed on it, sort of everything, but this paragraph was sort of one that was clear. You two were still in somewhat of a disagreement.
This
as to
was the one I was still in a
Right,
disagreement with,
okay.
yes. And
So-
we've
so-
since
So
figured this out.
15 has been
I'm
resolved,
just taking
because
it.
when I looked at this memo, that was really the one that was
Yes.
left
Yeah,
between the two of you as a
previously, the
disagreement.
water, the amount of water that the program thinks was above the top of the catch basin was like 1.4 feet, and now it's 0.2. So, and they're not increasing runoff from the site whatsoever.
Oh, I thought there was something that
Yeah,
indicated that they
2
might.
inches, yeah.
No, so.
Okay, so
the-
that was-
Let's get to that
Yeah.
All right,
when the
okay,
applicant
sorry,
is
we're
doing their thing.
playing technical.
So Scott, on page 5, on our late list of waivers requested, are you gonna amend the comment number
Yes.
4? So you
Yes.
wanna see DPW does recommend?
I do recommend that we.
So you can strike the
approve
word not
waiver.
in that sentence.
Yes.
Okay, just wanna make sure we have the wording for our waiver consideration correctly. Right,
So, Scott, can you give me like just the Reader's Digest version of how they addressed the drainage system? Was it a corrugated metal pipe that was causing the problem?
It
Was
was.
coefficient with it?
That is the main problem, but
Okay.
how they mitigated that was they added 14 more chambers, was that the number? 14
Okay.
more chambers to their system.
Combination.
And they also changed the way the modeling was occurring, so that water that was above the catch basin previously, the program didn't know what to do with it, so
Yeah.
it just was there.
Okay.
And now they're showing the model as that has an overflow bypass, so it shows if whatever's downhill of that, it's showing the water going to it, so the modeling is more accurate
I
now.
think we'll all understand it when we hear it from the
Did
applicant.
I hear you say that there's $10,000 being allocated to address the problem?
Yes, so that's going to add, it's gonna stop runoff from their site entering the
The chamber-
St. Anselm's Road right-of-way as it currently does, and it has for however many years.
Okay.
So it's
And
not,
and therefore not getting to the chamber system?
yes, the
Yeah.
chamber system's mostly taking the building, but
Okay.
the excess from the chambered system is adding to the problem.
That's adequate, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, Scott, we'll come back to you after the applicant makes
Okay.
their presentation. Anybody else at this table want to have anything to say before I ask the applicants to identify themselves and begin? Seeing none, it's all yours, Nick.
Thank you, sir. All right, good evening. My name is Nick Dolan. I'm a licensed engineer and principal with the firm TF Moran. Joined with me this evening to my right is Mike Murphy, Eagle Valley Brunswick, and our architect. In the audience, we have Jonathan Woodcock, over my back right shoulder, director of the physical plan at St. Anselm's, and also Jim Robinson, who's TF Moran's project manager relative to this site. I won't bore you with the general statistics. We normally talk about tax map, lot number. We all know where we are. I think Scott did a nice job as far as explaining what we've been working our way through. Really a combination of revisions to the stormwater management system, as well as clarifications in the modeling of the system to make sure that the model, as accurately as possible, conveys the results. Want to express our appreciation for DPW spending the extra time to help us come to that resolution, so thank you for that. Relative to the project, I think it'd probably be good use of your time just to talk about some of the things we've changed. So I'll go to the board and point those elements out. It's my understanding in the last meeting that there's a fair amount of conversation about drainage, and then also there was a waiver request on the table for a narrower drive aisle. That waiver request has since been withdrawn, and we've incorporated some of your suggestions. The accessible parking was previously located further to the north along this alley. Originally, the intent there was trying to shield the parking from public view but that really could be accomplished in other ways. So what we've done is pulled that accessible parking back. It's allowed us to eliminate some retaining wall and some other site features, and a lot of pavement in the process, which also goes towards the improvements that we've
What
discussed
page
thus
are you
far.
on, Nick?
I am on sheet C03. This is the site layout
Thank
plan.
you.
So in the southwest quadrant, or the lower left-hand corner, is the area that I'm speaking to. And this is the location in which we relocated that ADA parking. You can see it has the appropriate depth of the parking space at 19 feet, and then also a full travel aisle at 24 feet. So that's one of those primary changes. It also allows us to continue to protect that rare tree, the 36-inch redwood, so that can continue to be a specimen on the subject site. Other areas of revision, you can see the pedestrian plaza, the patio area, has been resized, so the geometry is a little bit smaller than previously. Again, it allows us to get rid of a little bit of that impervious area. We've incorporated some perforated pipe between some of our structures, again, to try and help with alleviating drainage concerns to allow as much infiltration as possible. And then really just off page here to the north, as Scott had mentioned in the opening, we've added some additional chambers so that we can also make some improvements relative to the drainage system. And one of the pipes that was, I believe, an existing either 6 or 8 inch has since been upgraded as well. So when we look at the plan that you have before you, I believe there's a total of 4 waiver requests, 2 of which are fairly typical to St. A's. It has to do with traffic. Let's see if I can find that other one. Traffic and site-specific soils mapping. So when we do these projects, we go out, we do the necessary test pits, infiltration testing, to make sure that we can model our stormwater management systems appropriately. Given the small area of the site in which we're working and the fact there was a building there before, we're really just tearing it down and putting up a much nicer one. The need for site-specific soils does not appear to be prevalent. The other waivers are in relationship to the drainage for the facility. You do require that bioretention be used on all project sites. We're really using a modified version of that. It's just a different type of infiltrative practice, so we're still meeting the goals of that ordinance, really just with a different type of drainage system. Scott had mentioned the surcharge element relative to pipes. When we look at the final results, there's really almost a modification to this in that, yes, there is still surcharge in the pipes, but we've actually been able to improve it in several locations. So again, I appreciate the extra time that DPW put in to try and help us to come to a successful result relative to the site drainage. As was mentioned, there would be a voluntary contribution towards drainage improvements at the bottom of the road. Other element that I can speak to that's happened since our last meeting is the sewer permit for the project has been approved. That's what I got. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
The drainage that Scott was talking about that's on College Road that goes down to St. Anselm Drive.
Yes, sir.
He talked about drainage that's off of the paved area. Where is that drainage in relation to that road?
I would be happy to answer that question. And I believe we brought a lovely graphic that will show that. So we look at our overall campus plan, and Collis may recognize this plan because we talked about it with the Conservation Commission. Just relative to how the routing of this system is, where does it ultimately go? So the colors aren't necessarily important to this conversation, but the areas in blue are off-site wetlands where we have ultimate discharges. So Geisel Library here, Hillary Hall here, Poisson Hall, which is the building that's being removed to make way for the new nursing and health science building, is located here. The run that we're talking about is right through here. This is that existing 10-inch pipe. As part of improvements that were done at some point, a manhole was installed to tie into this drainage network, and there is this corrugated metal pipe. So it provides this really awkward configuration where you essentially have a structure, a short length of undersized pipe, and then it ties into the trunk line that is along St. A's Drive. With the improvements that are being suggested, essentially allows us to alleviate that awkward geometry of drainage, install the catch basins in an appropriate location so that they can catch the stormwater runoff as it comes down College Road, and appropriately convey it into the existing system within St. Anderson Drive.
So is that a manhole-to-manhole system, or are there open drains that receive water at some
The
point?
bottom structure here is a drain manhole. That leads to a catch basin that is in that shoulder that's picking up some of the runoff from this hillside. And then it goes into the next catch basin structure that's located further downstream. So it is a combination. This structure that's upstream, which is at the end of our evaluation, is a drain manhole though.
And is that elevation of that drain grate, frame and grate, low enough for the water from the street to run into it?
No.
If you were to,
No, it's not.
there's no way you can break the curb line and turn water and have it go into that structure?
The existing catch basin that's in the grass?
Yes.
Not constructively, no.
What's that answer mean, not constructively?
Can you do it, can we do it, period? Can you somehow redesign that entire intersection? I suppose you could. I haven't put a lot of thought into it because it didn't seem like the most practical solution.
I don't understand about redesigning intersection. I'm asking you the simple question. Could you break the curb line on the downhill slope and channel the water
Okay, I think I understand you.
into that drain?
Not without regrading the drive, or not
Okay.
without regrading the pavement. So
Right.
you could not do it with just a simple curb break.
That was my answer, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I guess I didn't realize there was a manhole in the grass there. Is it buried?
Yeah.
It is, okay.
See, now you even learned something from
I
that
did,
little
yeah.
discourse.
It's
Education
it's
for
not
all.
on the, it's not
Were
on
they
the plan.
holding back a
so-
little on you there, Scott?
Not at all.
I was just wondering how it turned and changed to corrugated metal. I know people do some strange things, but
I don't know how that was originally designed or constructed, but appreciative that we'll be able to make the correction.
yeah, the manhole's not on our master utility file, so.
Is there any thoughts on St. A's part to upgrade pipe within their own facility, to get rid of the corrugated metal pipe and replace it with smooth bore PVC, which has a better flow rating and all the numbers, you know about that?
Yeah, it has a higher coefficient of friction, doesn't allow it to pass as much water.
Right.
Really, with the improvement that's being proposed, I think that's going to alleviate that.
Yeah, so the corrugated pipe is only a short length. It's from that manhole that's basically at the intersection to a catch basin in the town system. So it's a short.
I'm just talking about
Yeah.
getting rid of CMP and replacing it with
Yeah, the
with
problem
PVC.
is the town system is just 12-inch CMP, which isn't much better.
Okay,
So
that
that's-
answers that one too.
Kind of why,
Thank you.
it's why it makes sense to do when we do our upgrades, because.
I understand, I'm just trying to think of other solutions that are beyond what's been discussed. Okay, board members, any questions for the applicants?
I don't know if this is for Scott or the applicant, but Scott, one of your comments was there wasn't enough cover over the pipe.
Yeah.
Was that addressed?
It's an
or-
entirely different area, but it's easy enough to
Yeah,
fix
is that
it
easy
with
enough to
everything.
fix? It's not gonna change the design?
I
Okay.
don't think it will.
I just want to make sure that wasn't gonna need a waiver, they'd be able to.
Nope, we've been able to address it. Thank you.
Nick, you said you took care of your sewer permit. Did you work through the sewer superintendent to,
Yep, Corey took care of it.
took care of it because you already had an existing service and you're just rerouting it? You worked
Yeah, this
within
is
it?
one of those weird oddities that just, if you're adding a structure and it's a structure that services more than one building, the state requires you to update your sewer permit, so we did as such.
Board members? Awful quiet.
Maybe there's an advantage to letting
Are
it
they
go
so
on.
good that no one has any questions for them tonight?
I didn't say it, but
I wasn't saying you, Nick.
I know, but a little levity won't
You
kill
and I
us.
go way back.
We've been doing this long enough.
All right, well, Scott, do you want to give any further report on the drainage issues? Or are you
No, I think
satisfied that
I'm
you've spoke your
satisfied,
piece?
yeah. Like I said, Adam's satisfied with what we discussed this afternoon and what I presented to him of what I found here and how we can solve it.
So for Barbara and Phyllis and Collis, all former selectmen, present selectmen, what does that off-site money do? Does it go to the town prior to issuance of permits? And does it go into an escrow account? Or what happens with that money?
All in the above. All of the above.
Okay, and the selectmen have to approve it at the select board level?
It's the planning board that.
It's a planning board decision. Okay. So it's excuse me, it's our stop here and that's it. Done deal.
And then once they're ready to, do the construction, then the money is withdrawn.
Yeah,
as
I
needed.
believe we send an invoice to finance with
Right.
the actual
And they
bill
just-
for some work.
They just do a transfer
Yeah.
in the line item.
So the condition would be prior to plan signature, the whatever amount to be
Yes.
deposited into an escrow to be held then until,
Till needed.
So we have, here's the suggested condition. So DPW requests a contribution to an off-site improvement at the intersection of St. Anselm Drive and College Road at a sum not to exceed $10,000. Contribution to be held in escrow and shall be used for the purpose of future drainage improvements at the subject intersection. So if you want to add,
Does that become a condition of approval, Joanne?
Yes.
Okay.
she has this.
That's fine, I'm just asking if it needs to be a condition. So if no one has any more questions or comments from the applicants, I'm gonna ask you to stay where you are. We're gonna open the public hearing at this time. If anyone is here to speak regarding this application. No one is speaking, so we will close the public hearing.
So, did you ever take a vote on the waivers?
We don't vote on stuff until after we have a public
Okay,
hearing, in my
okay.
opinion.
Okay.
So we will get back to them. All right, so we have 4 things to discuss. We have 4 waivers to discuss, and we have to vote to accept the off-site improvements, correct?
You can do that as part of the overall conditions. You-
All right.
You don't need a.
You don't have to do that individually.
No.
So we'll start with the first waiver request for a traffic impact study. Normally, do we have a written response from the applicant on these, Joanne, for the waiver request?
Yes.
Is it in our packet?
I think I saw that last month.
Yeah, let's see if I have it with me. Oh, here it is. It's dated July 28th.
That one should actually be June 23rd.
It's June 23rd, it's from the last
Oh,
meeting,
wrong one.
and site plan waiver.
So what is our procedure normally? Do we ask them to speak to the waiver, or do we just discuss the waiver without them speaking to it?
Well, you can ask them to explain why they need each waiver.
Thank you.
And
So,
then, and then you can, I think you should go one at a time and then vote as you're going along for each one separately.
all right, Development Regulations, Section 2B5, Site Impact Studies, Item A, Traffic Study. Nick?
All right, I'd incorporate our letter by reference, but I'm happy to read it into the record if you'd like.
No, we
Mr.
don't
Chairman.
need it, we don't need to have a reading of it.
All
Thank
right,
you.
very good. The long and
Just
short.
give us the nuts and bolts of it.
The long and short is we're not adding students, we're adding additional high-level classroom space. So there would be no need to conduct additional traffic studies.
Board discussion of the waiver request?
Well, with that explanation, I'll make a motion to waive our development regulations, section 2.B.5, impact studies, item A, traffic study.
Motion's been made by Collis.
Because we believe that the waiver request is appropriate to carry out the intent and purposes of the regulations and would not result in an adverse impact on the public health, safety, or welfare, or groundwater quality of the proposed design.
Can I give you a second on that, Barbara?
Oh, Gail's got it.
Made by Collis, seconded by Barbara with further explanation. Collis, will you amend your motion to include Barbara's explanation?
Absolutely.
Motion's been amended. Barbara, you amend your second?
Yep, we're all set.
Okay. So any discussion on the motion regarding the first waiver, traffic study? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Waiver number 2, site-specific soil mapping. That's section 6L under development regulations.
In lieu of site-specific soils mapping, we've used NRCS soils mapping, which has been confirmed by a series of test pits within the area of work.
Anything else to add to that, board members, to make sure it's perfectly clear? Then I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to waive development regulations, section 6.L, site-specific soil mapping standards, items 2A, 2B and 2C with Barbara's legalese that she may want to put in.
And, which I do put in, and of course, Gail, these, we are also finding are not affecting the purpose and intent of the development regs. You've got, I saw you typing that. Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Number 3, use of bioretention stormwater, Development Regulations Appendix C, Sections 1C1.
Right, in lieu of using bioretention, we're using an alternate form of infiltration, which is the subsurface infiltration system specified. This waiver request is appropriate and it carries out the intent of your regulations.
With that explanation, I'll make a motion to approve the waiver of development regulations, Appendix C, Section 1.C.1, to provide an alternative to bioretention to capture stormwater runoff from developed areas and to promote infiltration into the on-site soils with legalese.
Second.
Okay, it's been made and seconded. And also, if I heard the applicant correctly, in addition to the bioretention stormwater area, they're using perforated pipe to also try to improve recharge into the earth.
Yeah, in addition to the infiltration
So
system,
that
we're
should be
also
right.
using perforated pipe. That is correct.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Passes. Fourth one
And this
is surcharge in the closed drainage system. DPW does recommend this. Appendix C, Section C. Nick?
Again, this carries out the intent and the purposes of your regulations, would not result in an adverse impact on public health, safety, or welfare. It's consistent with the intent of what's trying to be accomplished. It's an existing undersized drainage system. This is a practical solution, and it would not have an adverse effect. And to require the college to replace the entirety of that would be an inappropriate hardship.
So you want me to keep rolling, Barbara? You're looking for
Keep
me.
rolling.
You guys are on a roll.
Nick is doing the lead-in, you can pick it up.
We got their shtick down. I'll make a motion to approve the waiver for development regulations, Appendix C, Section C, to allow surcharge in closed drainage system during the 25-year storm, as well as some other infiltration practices, perforated pipes, and other practices as detailed in the stormwater management plan.
With legal,
With legal-
second.
with legalese.
Discussion on the motion? I would like to ask St. A's, this waiver you've been granted is for a very specific problem. I'm wondering if in future applications for future construction projects, you might consider upgrades to your own drainage system to take care of some of these problems. That's just a comment, that's not an edict. I'm just saying, in the future, you should be thinking about upgrading your own drainage system and not asking for more waivers because you've gotten one already with an off-site improvement. Thank you. That's my comment.
Can I just ask, are the off-site improvements contribution, is that a condition of the waiver, or is that gonna be a condition of the overall?
Condition of approval.
Okay, thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion granted. So you've got all 4 of your waivers.
Thank you.
Where are we from here, Joan? Let me go back to my page 1.
So we're on page 6.
Yeah, applicant's closing I have here is the next idea. Do you have anything to say regarding in closing statements, Nick, or any of your folks that you...
St. A's is excited to continue to be a part of this community and bring a high level of education. And as a team member, and I'll speak for Mike too, that we're excited to have that association with them. So thank you for your time tonight.
Okay.
Thank you.
Board deliberations at this point. We have anything to deliberate on?
Question, Joanne, you said you had 2 additional conditions. I understand the deposit of the not to exceed $10,000 for off-site improvements. What was the other one?
The other one was addressing a question that Colleen had at the last meeting about parking. And I did find that overall parking plan is from 2019.
Oh, okay.
So I talked to Nick about it, and we are going to
Add a note to the plan.
put a note on the
Great,
plan.
thank
So I
you.
just like to add that as a
Some
condition.
modifications to the parking area.
There's no modifications, it's just the.
It's the plan that shows where
We're
all
just
parking
going
is.
to reference it with a note that the overall campus parking plan was approved in 2019.
So that's going to be your condition of approval, that they have a, what is the condition of approval then?
Add a
In
note to
short
the
order.
plan.
We're just adding a note referencing the parking.
So
So
we're
there
gonna,
is
what
an
sheet
ov-
is that on?
There is an overall, well, the note would go on the sheet of the site plan itself.
It'll help us in the future when we go to say, how's their parking? And we look at the most recent plan and it then points us to some other plan
Yeah.
from 4 years ago.
And which sheet?
C3.
So that information's not currently listed on C3, but would be added, is what Joanne's speaking about.
Yeah, just for future reference. It took me a while to find it because it was mixed in with something, but so now that we have it, we should
Tracked it down.
make sure we can go to it again when we need it.
Well, so are we adding as a note hidden in the drawer behind Patty's desk against the wall underneath the
Scavenger hunt.
wastebasket? Is that what we're doing?
Something like that.
So it's on sheet C-03, right?
Yes.
Joanne, do we normally ask for something on the order of a final statement or a documentation from the applicant that the plan, the project was constructed in accordance with the plans? Anything to that effect?
Well, we usually receive an as-built at the end of the project. and
Well, then I would think it
it's
should be a condition of
stamp.
approval.
Okay, it's procedure as part of our regs, but if you want to add it.
Seems to me it's
certainly
always
do
been
that.
as a condition of approval that an as-built is
So
provided.
I think I found this recently looking at our regs. It's required for subdivisions, but it's not a requirement for site plans in our regs.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, but I went through it the other day because,
I always ask for it at the
yeah.
end, but.
So I think we should add it, just so it,
Okay.
Anything should be the other way around.
I mean, it was number 10 on my original general comment, so did it not make it to,
Number 10?
in the DPW comments, it's number 10, under general comments
Oh.
/ approval.
Provide as-built. So it should be in here, I didn't take anything out.
Yeah.
What number is that on our page 7? CAD
Page
file.
6.
On page 6?
Yeah, number 10 on page 6.
But that's
I
not
don't have
the,
one. Oh, wait a minute.
That's
Yep.
not the,
So that's general comments.
yeah, it needs to be added to this other
okay.
page, because I don't see it.
So number 10 needs to be transposed in its present language to the conditions of approval.
Yeah, I was going through these recently and thought it was strange that the site plans don't require it.
The original intent with that was when subdivision roads were actually getting turned over to the town, where you were then responsible to maintain them.
That's
The
all.
expectation is that you had a document showing that it was built per plan.
And that's all DPW
Yeah.
ever cared about
Yep.
back then. But I've been asking for them every time and they give them to me. It's not a problem. Yep.
Then we need to update our regulations to include that for all projects that are of a certain size, scope. All right, so we've added 3 conditions as I know. Does anybody know different than 3 conditions are added? Barbara, did you write them down as well? 3? Okay. So board deliberations at this point on the conditions as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve, subject to the conditions 1 through 16 as presented by staff. 17 being a deposit not to exceed $10,000 for off-site improvements of the intersection of St. A's and College Road, to be held in the escrow. I think, Joanne, you might have a couple of other words for that.
Yeah, I have a copy of what Scott read.
Okay, and so the exact language is provided by DPW. Condition 18, to add a note to sheet C3 of the plan referencing that the campus parking was approved in 2019. And note 19, which would be provide as-built digital file, CAD drawings to the town prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
That's what I had. Anybody have anything different?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving this application, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Gentlemen, if you're going to have a discussion, have it outside because we can hear you when you're in the hallway. The next application is new business. Next application is new business, map 5, lot 26. Proposed masonry landscaping business, 431 Elm Street, the Rogers family. Joanne?
So the applicant is here this evening for a completeness review and site plan review hearing for a masonry landscaping business. And the name is Granite State Stonescapes. There's an existing single-family home on Elm Street where they live, and there's a barn that has been rehabbed or is in the process of being rehabbed. They would like to add a garage onto the property, a 30 by 40 garage, and use it for storage for their stonescape business that they run out of their home. So because this falls under the landscaping business, that's considered landscaping according to our ordinance, they had to get a variance because they're less than the 5-acre requirement. In order to have a landscaping business, you need 5 acres in the agricultural district. This is a split lot zone. The front half is R1 and the back half is agricultural. So the business itself they would be using the area on the agricultural side for their storage of their stone and I don't remember what else the materials are called, but it's basically rocks and stones. However, the garage which is located in the R1 district would be used for the storage of their actual equipment.
Joanne, before you go any farther, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'd like to get a motion regarding regional impact and acceptance for complete.
Joanne, is the application complete?
Yes, it's complete with no regional impact.
Motion to accept, finding
Um,
that the application is complete and there's no regional impact. And I don't,
I see one waiver, Joe Barbara.
that's subject to, notwithstanding the waiver which needs to be considered during deliberation.
Second.
Motion's been made to find the applications complete, ready to be reviewed, no regional impact, and waivers for discussion purposes only. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Apologize, Joanne, please consider with your staff report.
Okay. So they are asking for one waiver, and the waiver is for a formal landscaping plan. They could explain why, but I just had a concern about, I handed you out an ortho of the of the area itself. This is the house up front on Elm Street, and then this area here.
Does the applicant have a copy of this to see what we're talking about?
Does anybody have any extra? The area in the back, you can see is somewhat treed, but not completely. So I was just wondering what they would be doing if they were to plan any screening or anything like that, since they are asking for the landscaping waiver. But then I looked some more and thought it's probably nothing, like there will be employees, there will be 2 employees that come and go, they'll park their trucks there, they'll go on the site, they'll come back later in the day. So you will hear noise from that. They also do snow plowing, so the employees may be coming and going at odd hours. But as far as the view, I don't believe there would be anything to look at really but rocks or field stone. So I'm not so sure it's, anything to really be concerned about. But I did put it in there because he's asking for a waiver.
Okay, thank you, Joanne, for that. Anything else for your staff report at this time?
I just had a few things. The house and the barn itself, they're labeled existing gravel drive. I think because maybe that's under it, but it makes it look like it's the barn area is the existing gravel drive. So that should be corrected. The, as I said before, the variance was granted. The rear of the property is quite steep and limited in what it can be used for. So Scott had some concerns about that, being that there's going to be a gravel drive that will be used to enter that backyard area. Conservation felt that there should be a drainage inspection and maintenance plan, which there always is, and she feels that, the commission feels the drainage systems should be maintained to function properly. The fire department commented that they need to have access to the site and that the proposed building complies with the town regulations as far as grade, as far as them getting grade and transition, getting up to the building. And then Scott had several comments.
So to talk about the fire department comments, they're talking about an 8% or less grade getting from the, or the 10% or less for driveway.
Yeah, and
It's 10%.
10% or less grade for the driveway from the back road to the proposed site of the new barn. That's what that means. I'm sure you understand
And
grade,
that's-
but
Yep.
that's what that's stating.
that's not what is shown right now, so.
Well, it's not clear what it is up to there. My question, and I should have tried to get Bill Connor to clarify, was if the driveway to the area in the back needed to comply with that, because it's at like 20% according to the contours.
Well, there's no structures back there, so why would it?
I didn't know if because they use heavy equipment up there. then
I
that's-
think it's related to structures, and I don't believe it's
Okay.
related to the entire site, because
Then if that's the
you
board's
can confirm
feeling
with
it-
Bill on that,
okay,
but I would
yeah.
suppose that a gravel driveway to a spot up in the woods doesn't have to be code compliant for fire apparatus. There's nothing else, nothing up there to put out.
Nothing to
at this
service.
point.
I would check.
I will check too, but
I'm not sure that,
I just didn't know with the heavy
I
equipment
think
running up
heavy
there.
equipment and that kind of thing triggers
okay.
fire department.
You don't
Yeah,
store
just for
fuel up
EMS,
there, do
maybe
you?
not a-
Well, we'll get to that.
All
We'll
right,
get to that as
to it,
part of the
because these plans
application.
were really hard to read.
Okay. Anything else, Scott?
Um,
You don't have to think of everything now. You can think of it later.
Yeah.
There was also a question about whether, does the fire truck need to get up there, and if so, does there need to be a turnaround?
Right.
Only if it's NFPA turnaround for a driveway exceeding 300 feet.
I think it might technically.
That's up to them to show on the plan what the driveway is, 'cause that's, and where the apparatus needs to go, that's another answer. If it only needs to go
I'll reach
to
out
the
to
structures,
Bill
then
tomorrow.
it's one answer. If it needs to go up to the lot, then it's another answer. Okay. Board members? All right, time for the applicant to speak. Just give us your names for the record and your address, please.
Joe Rogers, 431 Elm Street, Goffstown.
Thank you.
Caitlin Rogers, also 431 Elm Street, Goffstown.
Thank you, Kate.
Following the St. Anselm guys, I feel a little bit underprepared for this
This
meeting right now. I mean,
Are
quite
you building
frankly,
a 45,000 square foot building? I think you're well within your lane right now. Don't worry.
They've been before us about 20 times.
I don't know any
With
of
a
this.
surcharge payment system.
I mean, quite frankly, this whole process is stemming based on, small business trying to operate it out of our home, and we have no storage space for our personal vehicles and our personal tools, never mind, if I need to do an oil change on a truck or get my salter out of the freezing temperatures so it doesn't freeze. We're not running a retail shop. We're not, we're not storing and selling material out of it. We were 2 employees when we got the variance. Now we're down to 1 employee. And he meets me at the shop at 7 o'clock in the morning and we're out the door. So the traffic-wise, disturbance of the neighborhood is minimal to none. The most noise that gets made is when I'm doing work around the house on the weekend because I have the luxury of using equipment instead of digging holes by hand. As to address your issue, your concern with the storage on the upper lot, that is, this time of year, the reason why we chose that location is it's significantly wooded. You can't see any of it. Before I cleared that little section up top, we had it on the lower area. Everybody in town could see it. We were having a cookout. I got my excavator. I got a skid steer. We wanted a little bit of cleanliness for ourselves and also for the town. The barn / garage that we're proposing, we're gonna make it look like a barn. It's not gonna look industrial. It's not gonna look like here's a mechanic shop or a
Is that what's on
landscape
your
shop.
plan, is a garage, 30 by 40?
30 by 40
Okay.
is the garage. And that's just, the location of that is off the far end of our barn, so it's almost in proximity to our residence.
And the garage itself would be used mostly for personal.
90%
Like he
personal.
said, in the winter months, if it needs to get the truck out of the cold weather so that the salt doesn't freeze in the spreader, it would be in there. If, there was something that he needed to work on, it would be in there, but mostly it's gonna be for me to be able to park inside there, because right now my vehicle's outside in the weather, and the same with his, so it's mostly gonna be for our own personal use, but with the luxury of having it a little bit oversized to be able to put the vehicles in there if we needed to. When we got the zoning variance, we talked about, and I think Scott remembers, we talked about it being shaded from the street so that people aren't going to see the equipment, they're not going to see our storage up top. And when you go, if you're looking at it from the street, the road goes up to the top and there is a whole row of vegetation which blocks that upper level. So in the winter months when there are no leaves, it's a little bit visible, but for the most part it's shaded. So that's why we're asking for the landscape waiver, so that speaks to that. I don't know if anyone's driven by lately or not,
What, every
but
day?
every day.
I don't really
Twice.
see anything up there.
We-
I think it's well
and
blocked.
we-
You are
we-
putting the pond in, I don't know, there,
2.
yeah, but there's one right in front of there and, there's not a precondition, so we don't see if trees are coming down with the pond, so that's,
It's minimal on
Wait,
that end.
okay.
Roki designed this, he did there's 2 retention ponds.
Yeah,
There's
this is the one in the
the-
back that I'm talking about.
Yep, in the way that I haven't taken a tape and gone to scale or anything, but what I'm getting out of this is there's not gonna be any trees removed. It's
Okay.
gonna be able to just be kissed right on the back corner of our lot, where no trees are gonna be disturbed.
Okay.
And there's not gonna be any sales of retail?
No.
No
landscaping
retail,
materials?
no retail. The only material that I have at my place is, you know, a truckload of rocks that are left over for a job and we just recycle them to the next job. But we don't sell mulch, we don't sell soil, we don't even store bulk material for projects. It's just, again, leftover material that we get from projects prior to.
And some reclaimed granite that we've acquired for future projects, but
That's
that's
about
pretty
it.
much it.
Board members, questions for the applicants?
I know you mentioned 2 employees or 1 employee. Was there any restriction in the variance on the number of employees? Like, no, okay. Are you, and typically those are personal vehicles that are just parked like maybe in front of the proposed garage or?
They currently park there now because
Yeah.
I've created a parking lot.
Okay.
But once the garage is built, there'll be minimal parking and it'll be for the family. They'll be parking out back.
They'll be up top.
And again, it's only one little 4-door sedan. No, I mean, if you drove by, you'd probably think it was my kid's car.
And so all of your equipment then is parked up at the top, none of that? Now, I know you mentioned might go in the garage at some point, but otherwise, like, there's not gonna be a bunch of equipment parked like in front of the road, you keep it all up and
That
down the
was the
site with
purpose
other-
of doing that clearance
Okay.
up top, so that we didn't have it, you know, down in the lower lot when we're having a cookout of, 30 people, we're all sitting there looking at a bunch of
Looking at-
equipment.
Yeah,
We park everything up top.
Bill, please.
Any storage of salt?
No salt.
No salt stored?
No salt
Because
storage.
you said you had a spreader.
Yeah, but I buy per storm, I don't buy bulk.
Any storage of fuel?
No, sir.
No storage of fuel?
No
in the
fuel
proposed
cells.
garage?
No.
Question.
Board members, Barbara?
Scott, I think this is just for you,
Mhm.
and because I had a hard time with these plans. I get why we have the infiltration pond going in the back, in the agricultural side, with what's being done back there. Why are we getting an infiltration pond in the front? Is that necessary to deal with the garage
Yeah,
structure?
so, they've done some improvements.
I mean, before I say this, I will say, I drive by it, you've done a nice job with that site. I mean,
Thank
I
you.
remember when that subdivision occurred, and I thought, it's not leaving a lot of options for that house and that barn. It really,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember when Mr. Swanson used to own it? To
well,
drop
and I
off-
also drive by thinking, I wonder if he wants any of my rocks, but anyway. All right, so.
Maybe we can talk afterwards, away from the microphones.
All right.
Wait,
so-
let's just strike that from the record.
Well, the town will take them. You can get rid of rocks anywhere. For free. There was nothing in that. All right. So So why do we need that there?
So, well, first of all, with the original subdivision of this parcel,
Yeah.
they were supposed to put a pond in there.
Oh, they
It
were.
was never put in.
See how that all goes by the way sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
And we don't need as-built drawings.
So, that was noticed, I mean, when you first came in for TRC, they had nothing to do with that. They purchased the lot, it was
Right.
already subdivided. So, it's supposed to be there, so.
It should go in. It was part of an original agreement
Yeah,
on the
so that's-
subdivision. It needs to be installed.
So that's one of the main reasons it's there, but they've also since introduced, impervious up there, and this will help reduce runoff to the town's road, because obviously they're right on it, there's no ditch, there's no catch basins there, so
There's
any
gonna be
water
the
they
garage,
can
the
retain.
garage roof will generate some water, the
Yep.
parking area
No,
generates.
I get there will be some. I was just surprised at the size of it and the location.
He's got an excavator, he'll handle it.
Okay, I guess that's it for now. I'm a little concerned about the access to the back, but that's sort of their issue.
Well, the fire department answer is gonna make a big determination on that rear driveway, because I just looked at the numbers on your topo, and you're going from 308 to 324. And maybe 100 feet or
Yeah,
so.
no, understood.
So it's pretty steep
It
by
is.
standards.
Yep.
But if the fire department is not gonna have any issues with it, then you'll be home free. This is gonna become a fire department
Yep.
statement. Could be a subject, a condition of approval if this is if we're considering granting any kind of approvals tonight, or it'd be the board's decision.
Mr. Chair?
David, please.
Mr. Rogers, when this parcel was before the board several years ago, at that time, the entrance into the existing barn was very, very wide. And the board wanted something installed that would give the appearance that the driveway entrance was of a correct, proper width.
22 max of the
22.
right of way, yeah,
And
32 at the
so,
road.
and that was done through, I believe, some fencing installed that now gives the appearance of a proper driveway entrance, not 80 feet wide, but
Yep,
proper.
yes, sir.
So does anything in this plan modify that appearance of a driveway entrance?
Nope, not that I'm aware of. We have no intentions of modifying the entrance of the driveway. I've been getting in and out of the driveway with my truck and trailer with no problem.
I think if we talk to the fire department, make sure that they're okay with the way it's situated so they could get up to the garage. I'm just looking at it now, I didn't even think of this before tonight, but they might not be able to get between those two granite posts and the existing barn. So I don't know if sliding the two posts down and actually relocating the driveway.
So that would actually benefit me significantly, because it is easier for me to get out that end. I occasionally do go over my rocks, especially if I'm coming into town.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I would have absolutely no problem doing that whatsoever.
Okay, yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't even think of that before tonight, but
It would make it easier
it's
for
usually
all of
Bill's
us.
comments that talk about the fire.
Because
access.
we don't typically park anywhere down below anyways, so we're always coming in, going real hard left and going up. So if we slid that right over, it would just be a straight shot
Yeah.
into the garage, into wherever we park.
Yeah, I mean, I live in town and I work right across the street, so I drive by like 10 times a day. So I don't ever see any, misuse of the area, and it seems like you keep everything pretty tidy, so.
So that
The intent was
discussion,
to give the appearance of a proper width of an entrance to
Sure.
the driveway.
Yep.
so that discussion you just had with Scott, that would require a driveway modification permit.
Yes, it would, but
Okay.
there's no cost associated with driveway modification permits, but it's just a
gonna-
formality to make sure
There's no.
that someone doesn't make a 50-foot wide driveway.
Exactly, yep, okay.
So who is gonna take the initiative to speak to the fire department about these issues with the driveway? Are you gonna do it, Scott, or are
I
we
could,
gonna dump
I
it
could
off on
do
Joanne?
that, I'll include Joanne in my emails, and, I mean, I could just try to get him on the phone tomorrow, but I like having stuff in writing in case I forget what he says to me.
Make a determination on,
That's what he said to you.
Yeah, exactly,
could make
to
a
hold him to it.
make a determination on the
Yeah.
items you discussed tonight,
Yeah.
the location of the granite posts, how far access the fire department needs at 10% or less,
Mhm.
and what is gonna be their requirements for anything else on the property. If the vehicle's stored up top, is that
Yeah.
gonna be an exemption from the fire apparatus needing to get there or not?
I mean, they may require a waiver, I don't know.
It's pretty rare that the fire department can save a vehicle that's on fire.
Yeah,
Because
well-
by the time they get there, there's nothing but burnt tires left.
I just didn't know if there's a concern about the wooded area around it,
Yeah,
that's the,
so let's not let farmers have the farms.
So,
okay.
Ken, if I may,
Please, Collins.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to make sure I understand what's going on here, because you said there's not going to be any retail sales, but yet there's two areas here labeled as bulk storage areas. Typically, when we see that, that means there's going to be large amounts of material brought in, bulk stored, and then,
Might be a poor choice of words.
yeah, maybe want to clarify I don't want you to get in trouble down the road for,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Sure, no, I understand that, and then the wording could be confusing. I mean, it would just be, I guess the way that Roki determined it and interpreted it was, we have, say, I purchase Fieldstone in bulk. I don't go to Pro and buy a pallet. I buy it by the truckload, and then I bring it to my jobs for use. So that would, I guess that would be the interpretation of a bulk storage area, if that makes any, if that makes.
And you stated that the area that on your property is for excess materials from job sites. Is that what your statement was?
Yes.
So you're not having those dump trucks delivered to your place, you're having it delivered to your job sites. And then excess material is brought back to
Yes.
your home for future use.
Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe they should be
Yeah.
reverted to
Yeah.
stone storage.
or maybe we should say,
Just outdoor storage.
Yeah, just.
Material storage,
Yeah.
anything.
material storage,
They're
not-
temporary, yeah.
The one question that I would have with the fire department, and let's just hypothetically say that they don't have a problem with the roadway going up to the back section. The location of the proposed garage is within where the driveway has always been. There's always been that point at the end of the barn where there's been a driveway.
Okay.
And that's where the garage is proposed to be built. So if they had an issue with, if they don't have an issue with accessing the end of my barn, the garage is gonna be built 40 feet away from the barn. So there would be,
To answer your question, since you are proposing a change to your property, any grandfathered rights for driveway grades now become subject for discussion because you're proposing a new building
Fair
and a
enough.
change.
fair enough.
If you were not proposing a new building and a change, then they couldn't complain about the driveway grade because it's always been there.
Fair enough, understood.
New construction goes by new codes.
Yep, thank you.
Board members,
Question.
please?
Joanne, did the applicant get a copy of the report tonight with the suggested comments for approval?
His engineer did. I don't know if he
So
shared
no, we did
it.
not.
So, let me tell you why I asked. I didn't see him with one. This is, this process is pretty overwhelming if you're not familiar with it. And the applicant is correct that Nick Golan is one of the better ones at knowing what the requirements are. It seems to me that there are some needs here for the plans before it can be approved. And I am sure the applicant would like to get this done as soon as possible. So I would like to get answers to 2 questions and then go through the suggested approvals so the applicant, since his engineer is not here, understands what we're looking for. Because from their perspective, the driveway was there, the building's going here, the infiltration pond will take care of it, and once we get from the fire department, we're all set. And based on my experience in the board and all these comments, there's more going on here than not, so.
and just to be clear, Barbara, Nick Golan's not involved with this project.
No, to be clear, they referenced him before as being,
Okay.
that following that
Okay.
act
Yeah.
and talking about a lot of
Got it,
stuff
got it,
that
got it.
nobody understands
Yeah, yeah,
except
yeah.
Nick and the engineer.
For perspective, yeah.
Right, so, so, I have a question in regards to the profile. It's actually approval 16, and I'm hoping that, I'm happy to sacrifice my thing for the applicant to have to write on to go through this ultimately. 16, we talk about the access road to the upper bulk storage. That sort of goes to some of the plans and the detail here. So you need.
Yeah, and if fire's okay with it, then I wouldn't
Then-
necessarily ask for that.
You wouldn't
We
necessarily.
might still want it to the proposed garage, though. I don't know whether we need to see it all the way up, if fire's okay with a steeper grade up there or not seeing it.
Okay, because if we were to ask for an as-built to this, it would be for the proposed garage or for what?
The other part of the project is the driveway to the back and the area for storage.
Okay.
I
Yes,
think
the
that
drainage.
it would have to be represented on an as-built drawing as a driveway to the back, even though it may not require them to make all grade determinations on it, just
Okay.
as long
So
as it
I-
shows that it's there.
All right, so
And
we're
in
gonna,
this situation, the as-built would unless there's some change made, it would pretty much just be, confirmation that this plan was constructed to the proposed plan. So it's not as
All right, well, I
complicated as
sort of-
some of our larger sites.
I
but-
say that because of the drainage issues on the site, because it is really steep, and I noticed that conservation appeared to be quite clear that they wanted drainage inspection and maintenance plan agreement to be in place, which,
For the homeowners to maintain, or the business to maintain, or us to
right,
inspect?
the conservation
I didn't-
comment
doesn't
is that a maintenance plan to be in place that identifies who is responsible for the maintenance of the
Okay.
private drainage system and such that they're maintained to function properly and kept free from invasive plant species.
Yeah, so I did, one of my comments was to include a maintenance plan in their drainage study because it's typically one of our requirements and it's missing from this document. So Concom must have picked up on that as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
Collis, you're
Yes.
nodding your head, is that the
Yeah.
case? All right, so those were the one,
Yeah.
of the comments, that was sort of what,
Do you applicant, do you understand what a drainage maintenance agreement is?
No.
Scott, could you give it to him in 2 sentences or less?
You have treatment ponds proposed on your site. If you don't take care of them and you refuse to take care of them, the town will come in and take care of them and bill you for it. If you don't pay it, we'll put a lien on your house.
Good
Perfect.
2 sentences.
And what is the take care of it? I
Well,
understand
if-
an invasive plant, some type of.
They need to function as designed.
Right.
Okay.
So if there's space, elevations that the floor of the pond is designed to hold water with an outlet or something, and it fills in with silt because you have a big rain during construction, you have to put things back to the way the plan stated so that it functions as it was designed.
Okay.
For example, I think it shows a couple of sediment forebays on those basins. If those become filled, you have to go in and clean them out.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
they'll continue to function as a.
And the drainage maintenance agreement requires that you file an annual report with the DPW that my system is maintained and functioning properly.
and they have some of the,
They actually have a form.
maintenance
We have a
agreements.
template
Okay.
for it.
So basically, if you're proposing this type of drainage, you agree to maintain it, you just have to show the town on an annual basis that you're taking care of your investment, and you don't want to pay for it twice, I assume.
Fair enough.
So you
And
would
you
It's
should
not as
just-
complex as it sounds. If
Right.
you're- If you're used to doing construction work, this would be a pretty simple matter. for you.
Yeah.
You
would
should
need to
mow
just
it so it
sign-
doesn't, you don't have any woody vegetation
Yeah, but the
that
point
grows
is, he
into it.
understands how to do it, the point is, we need the paper for
Yep.
it.
We can
So
give you
that's
the
a
paper and you
different
just
thing.
need to
But, you know,
sign it
we're
and then
we're
we
talking
put it
about
in
a
the
drainage
file.
maintenance agreement in front of an applicant, I want to make sure they understood what that
Well, I
was.
understand, that's why that's why
I
I would
agree.
like to go through these comments with them, being able to look at them, and I'm happy to give my page 14, 15, and 16 to them, because this sort of summarized.
I'm sure that they would love to have them, but their engineer was sent them, so the engineer can also provide them with a copy.
Yeah, but-
I'll have a copy in the
I can't-
morning.
I
Don't
can't
Yeah,
worry.
but the
email it
point
to
is,
you.
if we're talking about them, I want you to be able to
See it, I understand.
see it and mark it.
You giving up your copy,
I
Barbara?
am, because Brian doesn't know it, but he has volunteered to share.
No.
You can have my copy, Barbara. We'll just keep passing them around the table, because none of my... I'd like to discuss number 29 with the board on page 15. I don't want to make this applicant the poster child, but I do think with DPW's short engineer, with the busy schedule everybody has, I think this town should be looking at third-party engineering to look at all these plans off the right-of-way inspections. If you're gonna pay somebody, we'll pay a third-party engineer. I'm not saying we're starting with these folks. But
If you
DPW,
look, it's a comment on there. Okay.
DPW I think, should be responsible for anything that's within the town right-of-way, which affects the town's right-of-way or the town's drainage system. Beyond that, I think it's time for us to go for professional engineers, paid for by the applicants, to do these inspections and turn them over to the public works or to the staff, because they're already stretched, and it seems like we're really laying a lot more conditions on a lot of these plans that DPW is being responsible to go out and inspect. They have enough trouble taking care of the town's needs without being burdened with all this extra work. So that's just a comment for future discussion. I'm sure Scott can handle a couple of detention ponds here, but a lot of
It
the
is just right across the street,
applications are getting very complex.
Yeah.
So Tim, you're talking about 29 on page 15?
Yes, I am.
Yep, okay.
So that'll be a discussion for a future meeting. Phil, please.
Yeah, I just have a question. On sheet 1, there's a plan intent, and on sheet 2, there's a plan intent, and both sheets just really reference it, just saying that the intent of the plan is show modifications. I'm not, I don't remember seeing those type of comments on many of the plans that we've gotten in the
Well,
past.
the issue is these sheets are not labeled for what they are. So so I think he's got the intent as what the sheet is supposed to be. There's drainage grading, the drainage grading sheet has got it on. But again, the plan intent should come off. It says the intent of this plan, it should be sheet.
I think this may be a goodwill exercise on the part of the engineer, because the only place we ever see intent is on septic plans now. All new septic plans have design intent on them, and he might have carried this over to this plan.
Is that
Just-
what they're doing?
All new septic plans had design intent, and you have to explain what the intent of the system is and how it's going to work.
Okay.
So this is probably a good faith effort just to explain to everyone what the intent of the plan is, as opposed to us never seeing that.
Okay.
It's also saying it like in the past tense. too,
Right.
Which is odd.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like there should be, and I'm just trying to look at our checklist, like, the intent of this plan is for site plan approval for masonry and, stonescape business, so I feel like that, because otherwise, if you're looking at this, it's not really, I mean, we know from our notes and from the application what we're approving here, but the plan doesn't clearly say what the proposed use is, so I think maybe working with the engineer just to get a few notes to make it clear what we're approving here is, this particular use, just so that way, in the future, you're also protected. It's not, well, what are you guys allowed to do here? We want this plan to be as clear as possible so that everybody knows the expectation of what you're allowed to do.
Yeah, I personally always include plan intent.
Yeah.
This one's a bit scant.
Yeah. And just, and I think, Scott, you maybe picked it up in your comments, or Joanne, just showing the right-of-way, and I noticed we don't really have, we have maybe the building setback line, but not a property line on the north side or northeast side here. I don't know that we necessarily need the property line, but at the very least along the right-of-way, because if there are some improvements to that infiltration pond, I think just making sure that those improvements are actually on your property and not within the town right-of-way. I think you're okay, and I don't think there's any grading, but it would be helpful to see that
I think also
property.
I think it might be a CAD issue he's having, because the lot line is supposed to be a dark line, and you can see it changes to dashes in the back.
Is that
on
what
the right.
that is?
Yeah.
Okay, I was,
Looking at the legend, I think I believe I commented on
They don't
this.
appear to
Okay.
be showing a front property line
It doesn't
either.
have a front property line or
Yeah.
the
Other
edge
side.
of pavement of Elm Street. Or
Yeah.
Well, that would be,
Center,
that could be
Melon.
guessed by the flares on the driveway if you wanted to give them a little credit or something. But just, the plan should show your front property line as well as the additional sideline if it's not 100 miles away. All right, folks. What are we doing with this application tonight?
question, what are the red dots on the picture we got? I need to fact that.
Oh, that's just to show where the area is behind their house.
Oh, to make sure that you understood what
Yeah,
lot
because
and
it-
where it was.
Such a
One packet.
Oh, one
dark.
packet.
Yeah, there were red dots on it.
Those are sites.
I didn't see umbrellas on the plan sheet. Maybe.
You guys aren't proposing like any lighting or anything?
Well, I mean, that's,
there.
so, in follow-up, Mr. Chair, that's why I sort of wanted to go through the suggested approvals for board approval, because I believe lighting was one of the things that nobody has even mentioned. So, if you go to page 14 of your packet, these are all things that staff seem to think the applicant needed to do to get these plans in a shape that they could be approved. What does address the buffer mean?
Oh, that can go away now if you're not concerned with the fact that they have enough trees in the back and that they don't need to provide any screening.
So the applicant could cross that off?
Yes,
unless
number
it's-
one.
Okay.
Do you need a pen?
Please.
You have one more, Barbara?
I'm gonna keep going, she's giving him a pen. So she can go through.
Which
There-
one was that, Barbara?
That was number one on the suggested approvals,
Oh,
on
okay.
page 14, it
Address
said
the
address the
buffer.
buffer. And then the second one is just correct the labeling, which we've talked about, a signature block their engineer will know about. The ZBA approval needs to be, the date of the approval needs to be added as a note on the sheet. Scott is gonna follow up with the fire department. The engineer will know about number 6. Number 7 is what Colleen was talking about, was showing, well, no, this is right-of-way, street name, and street classification of Elm Street on the plan. Where would you want them to be? Is the engineer gonna know where to do that, Scott?
So
Or where are you
what
gonna-
that, we have this list of things that belong on a site
Right.
plan. And one of them is the street name, which doesn't appear on here, it just says street.
Just a street,
Right.
yeah.
And the roadway classification goes
Mm-hmm.
alongside there.
It probably says Elm Street to the left of it, it's just a.
It's just cut off, yeah.
It's just cut off, yeah.
And then
Or Center
the edge
Street,
of
whichever it is
pavement
right
needs
there.
to be shown, like the existing features, specifically the road edge is something that should be on there. I bet it is in his CAD file, it's just turned
Again,
off or on
yeah.
a,
Carry over.
on a level that's shut off for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
What else was on that list of things?
I think that.
Barbara, are you gonna do
Number
these one
8
at a?
was lighting,
Yeah, I was gonna
Barbara.
do them one at a time. Lighting, nobody's talked about
Number
lighting.
8, no, nobody's talked about it, but it's on there as number 8.
Right, so is lighting an issue in this?
There'll be no lighting
We're not proposing to put any lighting
or
unless.
storage.
Is there any
Be on the front
existing
of the-
lighting?
So no lights on that,
There'll be lighting on the new barn, on
Yeah.
on the garage.
And
Okay.
you'll have to read our regulations, we have a dark skies ordinance, all your lighting has to be shaded, cast the light downwards. That's in our regulations, you can find that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and we've talked a lot about the fact there isn't a lot of employees, but we're asking for parking spaces, or are we?
I didn't know how many employees there were. This was one of my comments. I think I asked the question. I kind of had this comment as a question more than really a comment.
Well, I mean, it's probably a
It's just-
requirement to the regulations that you show parking on the
Yeah.
plan. So I think, it looks like you went through, you know,
Mhm.
And I heard two.
yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean,
But
Do we
he's
need
going
to
to
see-
have to
do
do
we-
a parking calculation, right?
I think you got enough room for parking spaces.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried about it, but it's just another,
To be shown.
Element.
yeah. And then the landscaping plan, they're asking
For
for
a
a
waiver.
waiver for. And usually when we ask for, when we deal with landscape plans for a waiver, we're asking for what's there as compared to what the calculation for the landscape plan would have required. That's usually what we do when this waiver gets asked for.
And that's in our development regulations for, there's a number of trees and bushes that have to be planted as a part of a new application, and that is a defined number.
And I have your waiver request of August 3rd in regards to the fact that basically what we have is that. So you might want to say that, because the garage you probably can see from the road, but it's in keeping with the residential use and zoning of that portion of the lot. You might also look at the original plan where the subdivision was done to see if they had any landscaping information on it, because I don't think you've done anything to the front to change what might have been there on their plan. But that's another requirement. That requirement, I know you've asked for a waiver, but my experience with the board is that you will need a little more information for that to be granted. So I'm not hearing anybody complaining about it. Elm Street Edge, we talked about. Utilities need to be shown to the garage, digital files, snow removal and storage. There's usually a spot on plans with little lines that look like fluff and then a note
Little
that
clouds
says the
show where your
snow
plow your
goes
snow
here
to.
in the winter.
You can just have them sketch one on it, because it really doesn't mean much. You're gonna push the snow off the edge of your driveway, probably to the edges, and like everyone else does in town. But show a little snow pile thing on the drawing, just to be compliant with the regulations.
We make everybody do that.
That's fine.
It's,
Not a big,
And in reference to number 10, if you want to look over the development regs on page 67, appendix F, it's landscaping and screening standards. That's where you can find that information.
The profile to the road, which is existing, well, the existing drainage, water main, and then the profile of the access road, we've already sort of talked about that. 17,
If it
It's-
exceeds 300 feet.
yeah, it's only if it exceeds 300 feet. Test pit location, I thought I saw a test pit on
I don't believe there were test pits done. I don't have test pit information in
this.
here.
Okay, so that needs to be done.
And then it looks like Roki, is that how you pronounce it? It looked like he used his soil information from 2017 that literally doesn't include this parcel. It like goes around it, so I'm sure the soils are probably the same on this one as they are on the other one, but the laziness of not redoing a free program online that takes like 10 minutes to do is just kind of
Or you could dig a test pit for him with one of his machines.
like
Because if
very
you're, if
easily.
you're claiming that your system is going to be a bioretention, which recharges groundwater, if your soils aren't compatible with that design, then it's not gonna work.
I bet you have great soil compared to, since what we have on the other side, I
Okay.
bet it's all sand, so.
So that goes to comment 20 with the bioretention, that the design needs to be updated to include bioretention.
Yeah, it's shown as just a regular infiltration pond, so bioretention has a different media at the bottom. And sometimes they incorporate some different plants in it, but your engineer should know there's New Hampshire DES has a stormwater manual that has some specific specifications for that media that needs to be in the bottom, and it's just kind of a
Let's just get
technicality.
moving on this.
So,
really
so
getting
we're
bogged down.
talking, so I'm just going on the soil, we've talked about you just heard Scott talk about the soil issue. There are calculations that you should know about through an engineer, the maintenance you can get, and the rest of these are a lot of standard things, but I want to thank the board for indulging me in going through that, because it was not clear to me based on the applicant and the state of the current plans that it was completely understood what was needed for this to go forward. I personally don't have
Give him 19.
an issue with the
We didn't talk
proposal.
about 19.
I just don't think that there's anywhere near enough information on this.
You'll want to have your engineer put a temporary benchmark somewhere on the site, so you have something to build off of the plan. It's another just simpler requirement from the regs.
That's the TBM.
TBM, yeah, it's number 19 there. Could be a nail in a tree, could be some stone that can't move, that you have a drill hole in.
Yeah.
He moves stone for a living,
Yeah.
don't say
Yeah.
that.
Well, some stone that you don't plan
Certain
on
stones
moving.
you can't
Some that
move.
can't be, so.
Not without
Boulder
TNT.
big as a house.
So,
he probably drills them so he can
so
break
am
'em
I,
up
am I
smaller.
My
hearing
father
from,
used to burn them.
am I hearing from the board that we need to have these plans tidied up a little bit before we would consider an approval at this time?
That's my position.
So, you heard what the board would like you to do. Do you have any questions at this time? If you do, you can feel free to call staff Joanne and Scott will walk you through any other questions you may have, because they don't speak for the board, but they let our applicants know what's required, and we look to them for guidance, because they're our town staff.
So it's my understanding that Roki got a copy of this?
Do you know when he got a
Today.
copy of it?
Patty usually hands them out. Like, I had this done last Thursday, and Patty usually emails them. I emailed him another copy today,
Okay.
just to make sure he'd have it, with him for the
All right, we
meeting.
have,
thank you.
I didn't
I
realize
make a
he was
No.
coming.
Can I ask?
no, excuse me, we have to do a public hearing before we make any motions. So, but what would you like to say, Colleen?
I wanted to just ask, because I know a question, I think, Phil, maybe you had asked about salt storage or fuel storage. Are those things that you would want a restriction on that, or you're just wondering?
Oh, we have
for
requirements
curiosity?
for them.
We have
Fuel
requirements.
storage areas,
So-
salt storage.
So we
I mean,
might
concerned
want to
about
add to the list, maybe some notes on the plan, there be no bulk salt storage, no fuel
I
storage
think I
on
actually
site.
hand wrote that at the end of the list of the notes.
Just to add those for
we were talking
Roki's
about
And
it.
in
consideration.
both, and in both cases, we normally look to the DES standards for both. DES sets standards for both bulk storage of fuel and salt.
Thanks.
Okay, before we go any farther, I want to open the public hearing.
They are the public.
Is anyone here to speak on this application other than the applicants? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. So, you've heard what the board would like to get back from you and your engineer to tidy things up, and we would look forward to you at your next visit here. We need to have a motion to continue to a date certain. Can you get this done in 30 days? Because we don't have a meeting in 2 weeks, our next meeting is in a month. So you have submission deadlines, Joanne?
So it'd be about 3 weeks.
We just need it like a week and a half before the meeting for continued applications. So
I believe we can get this
I
done.
can
So the
send you
meeting
an
is
email when I
September
send you the
14th.
staff
You're gonna
report
go back,
tomorrow, and I'll go
September.
over everything.
What's today's date?
Today's the
10th.
10th.
Oh, so you've got over a month to get this
Yeah.
ready, so, and a lot of it is just plan edits and
Well,
cleaning
it's
up.
not over a month, because they've got to get it in by the 3rd or 4th.
We'll have
The
it.
Labor Day is.
What is
It's
Labor
fourth.
Day? Is Labor Day is the 4th this year?
Don't be saying that.
All right, I make a motion.
I know, right?
Did you close the public hearing?
I
Yeah,
did.
you-
I'll make a motion to continue this until September 14th.
Second.
Who was it?
Colleen.
Second.
Colleen, both you guys. Motion to continue this application till the 14th of September. Motion by Barbara, second by Colleen. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. So we'll see you in about a month.
Thanks, folks.
Great, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff, do you have anything else for this board this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
No. We have the 14th CIP committee presentations will be the first item that night. And then we have a conditional use permit request for a second driveway on West Union Street. Andy Cataract.
Generally, we have these in our staff report. Were these, did they come in late since you printed this?
Did
So
what?
generally, we know what the upcoming meetings are what's
Yes.
going on, so we don't overload them.
Yes,
So
I
you-
checked with Patty this afternoon and wrote it down, so I knew you'd be asking. The deadline has not come yet,
This
so
was
we
before
may
ours.
have more, we don't know yet.
Okay.
And then the one that we just continued.
Okay, folks. Okay, Bill made a motion to
Second.
adjourn. Quickly seconded by Brian.
We're back quick.
You were right there, Mariana. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn?
None.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Thank you, Evan, for coming. Thank you, GTV.